Joining us now, Congressman, Republican, 9th District of Virginia. He's the father of Trucking the Truth himself, Congressman Morgan Griffith. Congressman, good to have you, man.
Good morning. Good to be with you.
Now, Congressman Griffith, also a key member of the Energy and Commerce Committee in the House of Representatives. Okay, Congressman, let's talk about everybody's favorite topic right now, the replacement for Obamacare. Now, I want to start with this. I've had a number of my callers today going crazy over their replacement plan. Nobody so far has said they're in favor of any of it. But I had a lot of callers earlier at the 6 a.m. hour saying, why not just replace it and get rid of it and go back to the way it was? How do you respond to that?
Well, and the problem with that is that the system failed. Should we have done a better job as Republicans? I wasn't there then. Beforehand to make sure that there was a way that people with pre-existing conditions could get insurance? Yes, we should have, and that's where we failed and allowed the door to be open for a plan as crazy as Obamacare to get passed and have people think it was a good thing for a while. And, of course, President Obama made all kinds of promises. But what we did say when we were campaigning on repeal and replace is that we would create a system where people with pre-existing conditions could, in fact, have insurance. And that's why you can't go back and say, oh, let's just repeal it and go back to the way it was, because there was no protection for those people with pre-existing conditions. We promised, the president promised when he campaigned, our system would take care of those people with pre-existing conditions, and that we would make sure that people who were of lower income would at least have the ability, there would be a mechanism by which they could buy some insurance and have choices that they could make.
Okay, so I happen to agree with that. I don't think, and I've said this 100 times as early as an hour ago, you have an entitlement, whether how it got there doesn't matter. I deal in the reality of the world that we live in now. You have an entitlement, and you've got about 50 million people that have some kind of coverage that would not have had the coverage absent of Obamacare. So now they have it. It's either free or it's heavily subsidized. So you can't just kick these people out. It's politically untenable. Plus, it's not the right thing to do. So the argument then gets to replacement. And what the president has said is that let's start with the leadership bill. He said it's open for interpretation, negotiation. We're going to get everybody at the table. We're going to try to get the best bill that we can through an open and transparent process. Is that how it's unfolding now, Congressman?
Well, we'll have to see. I mean, I hope it certainly unfolds that way. One of the questions is how many amendments will leadership allow to be considered? I have an amendment in I think will be considered, and that is a work requirement for those who are able-bodied and don't have a small child at home or a disabled child at home who are receiving Medicaid. Congressman Barton from Texas wants to shorten the glide path off of Medicaid expansion. That saves, by his estimates, about $27 billion. So we're not talking about, small dollars. So there are a number of amendments that are floating around out there. One of the problems that leadership has is the crazy Senate rules, and we've talked about that a number of times before. But under their rules, we can't just get a straight up or down 51 vote unless we use this reconciliation process, which then has a bunch of crazy rules. So one of the ideas I heard last week, which made sense, is that you give people a tax credit, but not an advanced tax credit in that sense, but that it goes towards some taxes they're paying, even if you had to include their Social Security tax in order for it to get up there enough money. The problem is you can't even mention the word Social Security in a reconciliation bill because that's not proper under the Senate rules. And so we're trying to, dance through the Senate rules and have a bill that comes off the floor that is in a position to be passed in the Senate under their rules. Forget getting the votes. First, we have to craft something that meets the Byzantine requirements of the modern U.S. Senate.
This is hard for people to understand. So when you say it's got to go through the reconciliation process, and then after you get something from this, I mean, how can it go through the reconciliation process if you can't get to 60 in the Senate to start with? People don't understand that.
Yeah, it's very complicated. Reconciliation is an exception to the modern filibuster cloture whole rules and the Democrats can't force a vote of 60. 51 votes will pass it on a reconciliation bill, and that's why reconciliation of a budget bill. And that's why, because they have special rules for that and it only takes 51 votes, we have to try to craft something that will get there, because the Democrat playbook, as you were just talking about your congressman, the Democrat playbook is to not agree to anything and to completely vilify what we're doing, which is why, I mean, look, we're doing some good stuff. We must be, because the Democrats in our Energy and Commerce Committee fought for 27 and a half hours last week straight. And we think it's the longest in history, but nobody was keeping records of how long a committee marking up a bill takes. But the Democrats are fighting us tooth and nail, and they know that that we have a possibility to repeal most of, not all of, but most of Obamacare through this reconciliation process. And so they're doing everything they can to slow us down, to stop us, because they can't use the crazy rules in the Senate to stop us in this one narrow exception.
All right, so it goes to the Senate, so they never have to get to 60, right, to get to the reconciliation process.
That is correct. 51 passes the bill, even 50-50 plus a tie,
right,
with the vice president casting the tie vote.
So 50-50 gets the Senate bill and the House bill to reconciliation, and that's it. Then it would go to the president's desk, right?
That is correct.
All right, so you got to get through the reconciliation. So as it stands now, I know you voted in favor of the pieces of it to get out of your own committee, Congressman. Explain your thought process behind that.
Well, and what we were doing was our part dealt with, part of the repeal, but also a lot of Medicaid reform, and we believe this is the first major reform that has come along. It also dealt with trying to, get rid of Medicaid expansion over time for those states that did expand. It gives them a little bit of time to adjust. The question is, how much do they need? And then, because you can't punish the states that didn't do Medicaid expansion, for those states like Virginia, there is more money going to traditional Medicaid for those people that are elderly and in nursing homes, or who are disabled, or who have small children, or have children that they're trying to take care of. We give the states that didn't expand more money for traditional Medicaid, and we don't cut some of their what's called DISH payments, and that's payments to hospitals who bear a disproportionate share of hospital care for the indigent or the poor. And so those things would go to the states that didn't expand Medicaid for a few years, and the other states, the states that did expand, would get a what we call a glide path to end that Medicaid expansion program. It is, I think, that part of it is a good, solid bill. There's some issues on the tax credits that people can look at, that the president, I know, is talking to people, that leadership is talking to people, trying to figure out the best way that they can do that. But, elections do have consequences. In this case, we get to roll some stuff back. But because we had 8 years of Obama, as I think you mentioned years ago, when we lost 4 years ago, that made it much harder to eliminate some of the bad stuff quickly. Now, we're going to get rid of it, but it's going to take a little longer.
A lot of us are focused on, and I've gotten some callers saying this, that we're focused on the 15 million that have insurance now that didn't have it, that are being subsidized. But what are we doing for the many, many millions more that had insurance and now don't have it because they simply can't afford it? Here's a text I just got, for example, from Jim in Chesapeake, who says, everybody is talking about the 15 million people that have coverage now, but what about somebody like me that works for a small business? They don't offer the coverage. I can't buy the coverage, so they have it for free. I was paying for it. Now I can't pay for it, and I don't have anything. What's our message to them?
Well, and what we hope to do is to, and this is a huge fight, and we had this fight the other night, we are going to change the essential health benefits package. That language is being modified across the board. The idea being that we're going to let people choose what kind of coverage they want. That will make insurance more affordable. There's a number of things that Secretary Price is going to do that will make insurance more affordable. And that is our hope, is to bring down the cost of insurance and to let people choose plans so that they can actually afford it. I mean, when you say that you've got to cover everything that could possibly happen, the cost obviously goes up, and then you price some people out of the market. And even those people that can still buy insurance, they have to buy a copay, an insurance policy with a copay and a deductible so high that they cannot use it except in catastrophic cases anyway. So it's just another failed Obama promise. They promised, that everybody was going to be able to have insurance and it would cover you. And in reality, they were trying to get rid of the catastrophic plans. And in reality, they pushed more people into catastrophic plans because they can't afford everything that Obama dictated to the insurance companies had to be offered in an insurance plan. And so we're working on that as well.
Congressman, in this bill from leadership, there's a bailout for insurance companies. If the bill is so great, why do we have to put a provision in there that insurance companies get bailed out by taxpayer dollars if they lose money?
Well, and I'll have to take a look at those provisions exactly. I suspect that a big part of it is that because we can't, phase this out by turning on a dime, we can't say that, on May 5th, everything changes. We have to continue going forward with the cost-sharing programs that aren't funded and with the insurance risk corridors that aren't funded. And we have to make sure that those insurance companies don't just completely leave the industry over the next 2 years as we phase in our plan. So I suspect that's part of it. I would hope that when our plan is fully implemented, that we won't need any insurance bailouts. But unfortunately, what Obama promised the insurance companies also has not come to fruition. Mm-hmm. And in order to keep them in the market for the next 2 years, we're probably going to have to put some money on the table.
So what leadership is saying about the bending down the cost curve of insurance, which is a key element for middle-class people because they want to be able to buy the premiums. They don't want a credit. They just want it affordable. A big piece of this is to be able to buy insurance across state lines to open the competition up. President Trump said this on the campaign trail multiple times, yet this isn't in the bill, and it's kind of like, trust me, we're going to get to that later. Why not have that right in the bill?
That does not comply with the Senate rules for reconciliation, and that's why that's not there. McCarran-Ferguson, which would allow us to get rid of some of the protections for insurance companies from antitrust, so that we hope would encourage new companies to be created, particularly in areas like my district where I border 4 states, would be able to create regional plans as opposed to strictly a state plan. There's some things that have to be done, none of which comports with the Senate rules, so we can't put it in this reconciliation bill. We're going to have to fight that one out step by step. We get this done first. We think some Democrats will then come on board with the new system and say, okay, let's make these other changes too. But in the Senate, you've got to get to 60 votes to do that. And I think the Senate rules ought to be blown up. We've had numerous discussions about that in the past, as you know.
Right.
I think it's bad for the Republic, and this is a classic example. We can't do what the American people want us to do under reconciliation, and we can't get a regular bill through because it takes a supermajority in the Senate. It's going to be tough. And so I'm not sure we can get that done if the Senate Democrats continue to be obstructionists only. But we'll see. If we get the first part through, the hope is that then we can start talking to some of the more reasonable Senate Democrats, particularly those that are up for re-election in 2 years, and maybe get to that 60 votes. But it's going to be a tough slog because of the way the Senate operates.
So, Congressman, would you see that as a separate, so let's say repeal and replace passes somehow, the president signs it. Then they're saying the second phase is that Secretary of HHS, Dr. Tom Price, would then be able to deal with individual regulations that he's got the power to get rid of those. That wouldn't need any congressional approval. That's phase 2. And then phase 3 would be we open this up for additional competition. Why would a Senate Democrat under phase 3 say, no, I want to protect big insurance companies from other companies being able to compete with them across state lines? What would be, I mean, how could anybody defend that vote? Right?
Well,
Am I right?
I've seen some amazing things over the years, and I would suspect that they would just say that, they're going to fight it tooth and nail in hopes that this program doesn't succeed in doing what it hopes to achieve, which is lower insurance rates and, a better system where the actual consumer, the patient, gets to choose
right.
A lot of stuff in hopes that they can win the next election and bring back Obamacare.
I see. So they would stop that in the hopes of reviving Obamacare as make it an issue in 2018 and then reviving it if they get back in control.
Well, that would be the only logical reason.
Only plausible
Not that
explanation.
logic always dictates.
Okay, so let me get to the $64,000 question. The replacement bill forwarded by leadership as it is now, if it came to the floor of the House today, would Congressman Griffith hit the blue button or the red button?
Well, fortunately,
the green button.
It's not coming to the floor today, and I'm hoping that I can get that Griffith Amendment added in that will make it just a little bit better. I am leaning yes. I think the energy and commerce portion is pretty darn good. I think Ways and Means portion, they've worked really hard on it, but I think it could use a few tweaks as well. And so I'll have to take a look at what the final version is. But I am leaning yes because I do think that based on the constraints that we have, if we ever want to repeal Obamacare, this is our chance. Just like time mattered in the fact that, we weren't able to get rid of it for 8 years, and it took that extra 4 years when we really could have done some stuff if we'd had won the election 4 years earlier. The sooner we get this plan in place, the less likely it is that the Democrats can undo it and return to Obamacare should we lose the next election. And so I think the sooner we can get it done, get the repeal done, as much of it as we can, get the replacement in place, the sooner we get that done, the better. So I'm a lean yes.
All right. Congressman Morgan Griffith leaning yes on their replacement bill for Obamacare. Congressman, as always, we appreciate you being on. Thank you for your unmitigated candor, as always. Thank you so much.
Great to be with you.
For more information, griffith.house.gov, griffith.house.gov.